Ghost-type Pokémon exist in the spaces just beyond the ordinary, where shadows linger, time slows, and the world feels a little quieter. In this journey, we'll explore their calm, mysterious presence and the peaceful ways they move through the Pokémon world. Gengar's ghost typing reflects its relationship with fear in an unusual way. Rather than embodying fear itself, Gengar seems to feed on reactions. It enjoys startling others, slipping behind them unnoticed, or casting shadows that move when they should not. Yet once noticed, it does not attack immediately. It lingers, watching, amused by the realization that something was there all along. This behavior gives Gengar a strangely social personality. It does not isolate itself completely like some ghost-type Pokémon. Instead, it stays near people and other Pokémon, hiding in plain sight, blending into darkness or shadows cast by everyday objects. Gengar wants to be part of the world, just on its own terms. In battle, Gengar's approach mirrors its personality. It relies on unpredictability, misdirection, and speed rather than brute force. Its attacks arrive suddenly and vanish just as quickly, creating confusion rather than sustained pressure. Gengar does not linger in direct confrontation. It prefers to control the pace, appearing and disappearing, keeping opponents guessing rather than overwhelming them. Despite its mischievous nature, Gengar does not feel unstable or chaotic. There is a consistency to its behavior, a sense that it understands exactly what it is doing. It knows how far to push, when to retreat, and when to simply observe. This control makes Gengar feel confident rather than reckless. Gengar's connection to shadows is deeply integrated into its existence. It can merge with them, hide within them, and move through them as though they were physical spaces. Shadows become pathways rather than concealment. This ability allows Gengar to exist everywhere and nowhere at once, reinforcing its ghostly nature without making it feel distant or cold. There is also an odd warmth to Gengar's presence. Despite being associated with darkness, it does not feel empty or lifeless. Its energy is active, curious, and expressive. It reacts to the world, engages with it, and seems genuinely entertained by it. This emotional liveliness sets Gengar apart from more somber ghost types. Gengar's evolution from Ghastly and Haunter reflects a shift from formless energy to defined personality. Where Ghastly feels diffuse and Haunter feels chaotic, Gengar feels settled. It has found its shape, its role, and its way of interacting with the world. This completion gives Gengar a sense of stability despite its supernatural nature. In quiet environments, Gengar feels especially present. Dimly lit rooms, empty streets at night, forest paths under moonlight all feel like natural habitats. These spaces are not threatening. They are simply less defined, allowing Gengar to move freely between visibility and invisibility. In such places, its presence feels playful rather than alarming. There is something comforting about Gengar's predictability. Even though it is associated with surprises, its intentions rarely feel malicious. It wants attention, reaction, and engagement, not harm. Once acknowledged, Gengar often loses interest in frightening and simply remains nearby, watching quietly with that familiar grin. Symbolically, Gengar represents the idea that darkness does not have to be heavy or frightening. It can be curious, expressive, and even friendly in its own strange way. Gengar shows that the unknown does not always want to hurt you. Sometimes it just wants to be seen. When Gengar rests, it often does so in shadows, partially visible, partially hidden. Its body relaxes, grin softening but never fully fading. It does not fully disappear. It stays close, content to exist on the edge of perception without demanding attention. Gengar's presence does not weigh on the environment. It does not drain warmth or silence sound. Instead, it adds a subtle tension, a sense that the world is slightly more alive than it appears. This liveliness feels gentle rather than unsettling, like noticing movement in peripheral vision without fear. In a calm, sleep-focused setting, Gengar becomes less a trickster and more a quiet companion of the night. It moves less, watches more, and settles into stillness without losing its character. The grin remains, but it feels softer, less mischievous, more content. Rather than fading away completely, Gengar lingers. It stays in the corners, in the shadows, in the quiet pauses between thoughts, not threatening, not demanding, simply present. In that gentle presence, Gengar feels less like a ghost meant to scare and more like a reminder that even darkness can be familiar, playful, and calm when allowed to exist without fear. Golurk feels less like a Pokémon that moves through the world and more like a structure that the world has learned to move around. Its presence is heavy, ancient, and deeply settled, as though it has been standing in the same place for centuries and simply decided at some point to take a step forward. Even then, that movement never feels hurried. Golurk does nothing quickly. It exists on a timescale far longer than urgency, far slower than impulse. Its body is formed from clay and stone, shaped into a towering, symmetrical figure marked by glowing runes that pulse faintly with contained energy. These markings do not flash or flare. They glow steadily, softly, like embers buried deep beneath layers of earth. The light suggests life, but not excitement. It feels more like awareness, something that continues quietly without needing expression. Golurk's posture is upright and balanced, arms heavy at its sides, legs planted firmly beneath it. There is no aggression in the way it stands. It does not lean forward or tense its body in anticipation. Instead, it feels anchored, like a monument that happens to be capable of movement. Even when inactive, Golurk gives the impression that it is fully present, aware of everything around it without reacting to it. The ghostly aspect of Golurk's nature is subtle. Unlike many ghost-type Pokémon that feel ethereal or fleeting, Golurk's spirit is bound tightly to its physical form. The ghost within Golurk does not drift or whisper. It remains contained, purposeful, and calm. This containment gives Golurk a grounded presence that feels reassuring rather than unsettling. Golurk is often associated with ancient civilizations, forgotten cities, and ruins slowly reclaimed by time. These environments suit it perfectly. Broken stone, worn paths, and quiet structures feel like extensions of its own body. Golurk does not disrupt these spaces. It belongs to them, standing among them as though it was always meant to be there. When Golurk walks, each step is slow and deliberate. The ground does not shake violently beneath it. Instead, there is a sense of weight being carefully redistributed. Golurk understands its own mass and moves accordingly, respecting the world beneath it rather than dominating it. This restraint reinforces the feeling that Golurk's strength is fully under control. One of Golurk's most surprising traits is its ability to fly. By sealing energy into its limbs and releasing it in controlled bursts, Golurk can lift itself into the air, transforming into something almost mechanical in function. Yet even in flight, Golurk does not feel fast or chaotic. It rises steadily, moves smoothly, and descends with care. It flies not to chase, but to reposition, as though flight is simply another tool rather than an expression of freedom. Golurk's role as a guardian is deeply ingrained in its identity. It does not question this role, nor does it seek recognition for it. It guards because it was made to guard. This purpose-driven existence gives Golurk a quiet clarity. There is no internal conflict, no desire to be something else. It simply fulfills what it was created to do. This lack of internal struggle gives Golurk an emotionally neutral presence. It does not feel sadness, anger, or joy in the way living creatures do. Instead, it exists in a state of steady purpose. This emotional stillness can feel calming, like standing near something that cannot be shaken by uncertainty or fear. Golurk does not rest in the traditional sense. It enters long periods of dormancy, standing motionless for years at a time. During these moments, it appears completely inactive, yet its internal energy remains stable. This dormancy is not decay. It is rest stretched across decades rather than hours, aligned more with geological time than biological rhythm. The runes etched into Golurk's body are believed to regulate its power, preventing instability and maintaining balance. These symbols are precise and intentional, reinforcing the idea that Golurk was carefully constructed rather than randomly formed. Everything about it suggests planning, foresight, and patience. In battle, Golurk's movements remain slow but decisive. It does not strike repeatedly or wildly. Each action is singular and complete, as though it understands that unnecessary movement wastes energy. When Golurk acts, it commits fully, then returns to stillness just as completely. There is something deeply reassuring about Golurk's consistency. It does not change behavior based on mood or environment. It responds only to necessity. This predictability makes it feel safe rather than threatening, like a structure that will remain standing regardless of weather or time. Golurk's ghost typing adds a layer of mystery rather than fear. It suggests that something unseen animates its massive form, yet that presence is calm and contained. The spirit within Golurk does not seek escape. It is bound willingly, aligned with the body it inhabits. Symbolically, Golurk represents endurance without desire. It does not want, chase, or crave. It simply remains. In a world driven by motion and ambition, Golurk stands as a reminder that existence itself can be enough, that purpose does not always require change. There is a quiet beauty in imagining Golurk standing alone beneath an open sky. Wind moves around it, dust settles at its feet, and light shifts across its stone surface. Golurk does not react. It does not need to. Time passes, and Golurk remains exactly as it is. As a ghost-type Pokémon, Golurk does not haunt in the traditional sense. It does not scare or linger with intent. It guards, watches, and waits. Its presence feels less like a spirit tied to loss, and more like one tied to responsibility. In a calm, sleep-focused setting, Golurk becomes almost meditative to imagine. Its stillness invites stillness. Its patience encourages slowing down. Nothing about it demands attention or reaction. Golurk does not fade into the background, nor does it step forward into focus. It simply exists, steady and unmoving, a constant within a shifting world. In that quiet endurance, Golurk feels less like a ghost and more like a promise that some things, once created with care and purpose, are meant to remain. Spiritomb exists as a convergence rather than a single being, a quiet gathering of many voices held together by stillness and containment. Its presence feels dense and unmoving, like air that has settled and refuses to drift. Unlike ghost-type Pokémon that wander or glide freely, Spiritomb remains anchored, bound to a physical vessel that keeps everything inside contained and balanced. This sense of confinement does not feel frantic or painful. It feels deliberate, as though Spiritomb understands that stillness is the only way for so many spirits to coexist peacefully. The form Spiritomb takes is unusual and deeply symbolic. At its center is a swirling, shadowy face, surrounded by a mass of purple and green energy that never quite disperses. This movement is slow and constant, like smoke curling in a closed room. It never explodes outward or collapses inward. It simply circulates, repeating the same gentle patterns over and over again, suggesting equilibrium rather than chaos. Spiritum's connection to the odd keystone is central to its identity. The keystone acts as an anchor, holding the gathered spirits in place and preventing them from scattering. This bond is not portrayed as violent imprisonment. Instead, it feels like containment for the sake of balance. Without the keystone, the spirits would be restless and unfocused. With it, they become quiet, unified, and calm. Despite being composed of many spirits, Spiritum does not feel loud or overwhelming. There is no clamor of voices or competing emotions. Everything about it feels muted and blended together, as though individuality has softened into collective stillness. This absence of internal conflict gives Spiritum a surprisingly peaceful presence, one that feels heavy but not threatening. Spiritum does not move through the world in the traditional sense. It does not walk or fly with intent. Instead, it hovers close to its anchor, drifting slightly but never straying far. This limited movement reinforces the idea that Spiritum's power is not tied to freedom or expansion, but to containment and restraint. The dark typing of Spiritum reflects depth rather than danger. Darkness here is not emptiness, but density, a space where many things exist at once without clarity. Spiritum embodies this layered darkness, holding complexity without expressing it outwardly. It does not seek to reveal what lies within, it simply holds it. In battle, Spiritum's approach mirrors its nature. It does not rush or overwhelm opponents. It endures, disrupts, and waits. Its actions feel subtle and measured, as though time itself is on its side. Spiritum does not rely on speed or force. It relies on presence and inevitability. There is a sense of age associated with Spiritum, not measured in years but in accumulation. Each spirit within it represents a fragment of the past, a memory that has not faded completely. Yet these memories do not feel painful or emotional. They feel distant, softened by time, existing without urgency. Spiritum's expression remains constant, its face fixed in a calm, unreadable stare. This expression does not convey anger or sadness. It simply exists, observing without reaction. This neutrality makes Spiritum feel grounded despite its supernatural nature, like something that has long since moved beyond emotional extremes. The environment around Spiritum often feels heavier, quieter, and more still. Sound seems to dull slightly, movement slows, and space feels more compact. This effect is not oppressive, it is calming, as though Spiritum encourages everything nearby to settle and stop rushing. Spiritum does not seek interaction. It does not lure or chase. It remains where it is, allowing others to come and go freely. This passive presence reinforces the idea that Spiritum is not predatory or manipulative. It exists independently of attention. Symbolically, Spiritum represents containment as peace. It shows that sometimes balance is achieved not through release, but through holding things together gently and firmly. The many spirits within Spiritum are not erased or silenced. They are simply quieted, allowed to coexist without conflict. There is also an element of responsibility in Spiritum's existence. Being bound to the keystone ensures that the spirits do not scatter or cause unrest. Spiritum bears this burden without resistance, remaining anchored even as time passes. This sense of duty gives it a quiet dignity. When Spiritomb is inactive, it appears almost statue-like, its swirling form slowing slightly but never stopping entirely. This perpetual motion within stillness creates a hypnotic effect, one that draws attention without demanding it. Watching Spiritomb feels like watching a slow, endless loop, calming through repetition. Spiritomb's ghostly nature does not feel tragic. There is no sense of longing or regret. Whatever emotions once existed have softened into neutrality. What remains is awareness without urgency, memory without pain. In a calm, sleep-focused setting, Spiritomb becomes less mysterious and more grounding. Its steady presence invites stillness. Its lack of urgency encourages slowing down. Nothing about it pushes or pulls. It simply remains. Spiritomb does not fade or transform. It stays exactly as it is, anchored and contained, holding countless pasts within a single, quiet form. In that steady existence, Spiritomb feels less like a ghost bound by unrest and more like a place where movement has finally settled, content in stillness and balance. Shedinja exists in a way that feels almost paradoxical, a Pokémon defined less by what it does and more by what it is not. Its presence is quiet, hollow, and strangely delicate, as though it occupies space without truly belonging to it. Unlike most ghost-type Pokémon, Shedinja does not drift, wander, or linger with intent. It simply exists, suspended in a state between motion and stillness, life and absence, awareness and emptiness. The origin of Shedinja is one of the most unusual in the Pokémon world. It is not born in the traditional sense, nor does it evolve through growth or accumulation. Instead, it is left behind, a discarded shell that somehow awakens. When Nincada evolves, Shedinja appears as what remains, an empty husk animated by something unseen. This origin gives Shedinja an identity rooted in separation rather than transformation, making it feel less like a being that became something new and more like something that was uncovered. Shedinja's body is rigid and unmoving, shaped like an insect husk, frozen in time. Its surface appears brittle and dry, as though it could crumble if touched too forcefully. There is no visible sign of breathing, no subtle shift in posture, no indication of physical life. Yet despite this stillness, Shedinja is undeniably present. It hovers silently, held aloft by an unseen force, existing without effort or strain. The hollow space beneath Shedinja's shell is its most defining feature. This emptiness is not hidden. It is openly visible, a void where something should be. Rather than feeling violent or disturbing, this emptiness feels calm and neutral, like an open window in a quiet room. There is no movement inside, no swirling energy or flickering light, just absence, steady and unchanging. Shedinja's ghost typing is expressed through this emptiness rather than through motion or sound. It does not haunt in the traditional sense. It does not moan, drift, or seek interaction. Instead, its presence feels passive, as though it is simply occupying space because it continues to exist, not because it wants to. This lack of desire gives Shedinja a uniquely tranquil quality among ghost-type Pokémon. There is a faint awareness suggested in Shedinja's single visible eye. This eye does not blink or shift frequently. It remains open, fixed, and calm, observing without emotion. There is no curiosity or intent behind the gaze, only awareness. Shedinja sees, but it does not judge or react. This unchanging observation contributes to its detached, almost meditative presence. Shedinja does not move through the world with purpose. It does not seek shelter, avoid danger, or chase opportunity. It floats where it is, drifting only slightly if disturbed. This lack of motivation separates Shedinja from most Pokémon, which are driven by instinct, survival, or connection. Shedinja feels free of these drives, existing without needing to go anywhere. The environments Shedinja inhabits often feel quiet and forgotten. Abandoned paths, empty clearings, still forests, and unused spaces suit it best. These are places where nothing is expected to happen, where time feels stretched and uneventful. In such settings, Shedinja feels natural, as though it belongs to moments where nothing changes. There is no aggression in Shedinja's behavior. It does not defend territory or react to intrusion. If approached, it does not retreat or advance. It simply remains. This neutrality can feel unsettling at first, but over time, it becomes calming. Shedinja does not judge presence or absence. Everything is treated the same. In battle, Shedinja's nature becomes even more abstract. Its strength does not come from endurance or power, but from limitation. It exists under strict conditions, unaffected by most forces, yet fragile in others. This selective vulnerability mirrors its broader identity, one defined by narrow boundaries rather than adaptability. Shedinja survives not by resisting everything, but by being untouched by most things. Despite this, Shedinja does not feel defensive. It does not brace or prepare. It simply exists within its conditions, unaffected until something aligns precisely enough to disturb it. This acceptance of boundaries gives Shedinja a peaceful quality, one that feels content within limitation rather than threatened by it. Shedinja does not interact socially. It does not seek companionship or avoid it. Other Pokémon may pass by without acknowledgement. Shedinja does not respond. This isolation does not feel lonely. It feels complete, as though Shedinja does not experience the absence of connection as something missing. There is something deeply quiet about Shedinja's stillness. It does not hum with energy or pulse with light. It does not emit sound or movement. This stillness feels absolute, like a pause that never resumes. In a world filled with motion and noise, Shedinja becomes a point of total calm. Symbolically, Shedinja represents the idea of emptiness without loss. It challenges the notion that absence must be painful or frightening. Instead, it presents emptiness as neutral, even peaceful. There is nothing to fill, nothing to seek, nothing to resolve. Shedinja simply is. This symbolism makes Shedinja uniquely suited to a sleep-focused narrative. Its presence does not stimulate thought or emotion. It does not provoke curiosity or tension. It allows the mind to rest, mirroring its own lack of urgency. Observing Shedinja feels like observing still air, unchanging and undisturbed. Shedinja's inability to change or grow further reinforces this sense of finality. It does not evolve, adapt, or transform. What it is now is what it will always be. This permanence removes anticipation, allowing everything to settle into acceptance. When Shedinja is at rest, it appears no different than when it is active. There is no visible transition. This consistency reinforces the idea that time has little meaning to Shedinja. Moments pass without impact. Hours and days feel the same. The world around Shedinja may change. Light may shift, shadows may move, wind may pass. Shedinja remains unaffected. It does not respond to these changes, nor does it resist them. It simply remains present, unchanged by motion it does not participate in. In the context of ghost-type Pokémon, Shedinja feels less like a spirit tied to memory or emotion, and more like a remnant of form itself. It is not haunted by the past. It is not anchored by purpose. It exists because it continues to exist. There is no sadness in Shedinja's design, no longing, no regret, no fear. Any emotion that might have existed has faded into neutrality. What remains is awareness without attachment, presence without desire. In a quiet, dimly lit space, imagining Shedinja hovering gently feels deeply calming. Its shell remains still, its eye open, its body unmoving. Nothing changes, and nothing needs to. Shedinja does not invite interaction, but it does not reject it either. It simply remains, allowing others to exist around it without interference. This passive coexistence feels gentle and non-intrusive. Rather than concluding with emphasis or emotion, Shedinja's presence simply continues. It floats quietly, hollow and calm, unbothered by time or motion. In that unchanging stillness, Shedinja becomes a symbol of rest without expectation, a quiet pause that never demands an ending, content in simply being. Rotom is in a state of constant quiet curiosity, a ghost-type Pokémon that feels energetic without ever becoming chaotic. Unlike many spirits that linger or haunt with heaviness, Rotom feels light, inquisitive, and always gently in motion. Its presence is defined less by stillness and more by soft activity, like a current of electricity flowing steadily through an otherwise calm space. Rotom does not rush, and it does not settle completely. It simply drifts, alert and engaged, content to observe and explore. At its core, Rotom is a small, luminous form, shaped like a flicker of energy given just enough structure to be recognized. Its body glows faintly, outlined by shifting edges that suggest motion even when it is still. This glow is not harsh or alarming. It feels playful and warm, like light reflected off glass rather than lightning tearing through the sky. Rotom's form feels flexible, adaptable, and open, as though it was never meant to stay one thing for very long. Rotom's ghost typing is expressed through its intangibility rather than darkness. It slips easily through space, passing through walls, floors, and objects without resistance. These movements feel natural and effortless, as though physical boundaries are suggestions rather than rules. Rotom does not force its way through objects. It simply passes, like a thought drifting through the mind without interruption. Electricity is deeply tied to Rotom's identity, but it is not wild or unstable. The energy within Rotom feels controlled and curious, rather than dangerous. It crackles softly, hums quietly, and pulses in gentle rhythms. This energy is not something Rotom uses to dominate or intimidate. It is something it uses to interact, explore, and understand the world around it. One of Rotom's most defining traits is its fascination with machines. Rotom does not view technology as separate from itself. Instead, it treats machines as extensions of space it can inhabit. When Rotom enters an appliance, it does not possess it in a violent or invasive way. It integrates, animating the object from within and giving it personality rather than control. This interaction feels playful and curious, as though Rotom is experimenting rather than taking over. Each form Rotom takes reflects this adaptability. Whether inhabiting a fan, a washing machine, a refrigerator, or other devices, Rotom adjusts its behavior to match the function of the object. Yet its core personality remains unchanged. It stays curious, alert, and expressive, enjoying the novelty of each form without losing itself. This consistency across change gives Rotom a reassuring stability beneath its constant motion. Rotom's eyes are bright and expressive, often wide with interest. They do not convey fear or menace. Instead, they reflect enthusiasm and engagement, as though Rotom is always discovering something new, even in familiar surroundings. This expression makes Rotom feel approachable and friendly rather than eerie. In its base form, Rotom moves freely through the air, drifting lightly rather than flying with intent. Its movement has no destination in mind. It wanders because wandering itself is interesting. This lack of urgency gives Rotom a calm presence despite its activity. It is active without being restless, engaged without being stressed. Rotom's presence often brings subtle motion to otherwise still environments. Lights may flicker gently, screens may glow faintly, and machines may hum softly. These changes are not disruptive. They feel like signs of life rather than disturbances. Rotom does not break silence. It adds a layer of quiet activity to it. There is a sense of playfulness in how Rotom interacts with the world. It enjoys experimenting, entering and exiting objects, testing boundaries, and observing reactions. Yet this playfulness is never cruel. Rotom does not seek to frighten or overwhelm. It seeks engagement, curiosity, and interaction, driven by interest rather than mischief. Despite its energetic nature, Rotom is not impulsive. It does not rush from one object to another without pause. It lingers, explores, and moves on only when curiosity is satisfied. This measured pace gives its activity a rhythm that feels calming rather than stimulating. Rotom's adaptability also extends to its emotional state. It does not become distressed easily. Change does not unsettle it. New environments are met with curiosity rather than fear. This emotional flexibility makes Rotom feel resilient, able to move through shifting circumstances without tension. In battle, Rotom's approach mirrors its everyday behavior. It relies on versatility and positioning rather than raw force. It adapts to situations smoothly, shifting forms or strategies without panic. Its actions feel thoughtful rather than reactive, guided by awareness rather than aggression. Rotom's ghostly nature allows it to remain unseen when it chooses. It can fade into walls or objects, observing quietly without interaction. This invisibility is not used for ambush or threat. It is used for exploration, allowing Rotom to understand spaces from within rather than from the outside. There is something comforting about Rotom's presence in quiet environments. In an empty room, its soft glow and gentle hum feel like companionship rather than intrusion. It fills space without crowding it, offering subtle activity that prevents stillness from feeling empty. Symbolically, Rotom represents curiosity without fear. It shows that the unknown does not need to be threatening, and that exploration can be gentle and calm rather than risky or intense. Rotom approaches the world with openness, trusting that most spaces are safe to explore. Rotom's ability to change forms without losing identity also reflects a sense of self that is flexible but stable. It does not cling to a single shape or role. It adapts naturally, enjoying variation without anxiety. This adaptability feels soothing, suggesting that change does not always require struggle. When Rotom rests, it does not fully shut down. Its glow dims slightly, movement slows, and activity becomes minimal. Yet, awareness remains. It exists in a low-energy state, gently humming, content to remain quietly present. The environments Rotom inhabits often feel more alive because of it. A silent hallway feels less empty. A powered-off machine feels less inert. Rotom adds a sense of gentle awareness to places that might otherwise feel forgotten or unused. There is no sense of past burden or lingering emotion tied to Rotom. It is not haunted by memory or loss. Its ghost typing feels more like a state of being than a result of tragedy. Rotom exists as energy and curiosity, not as regret. In a sleep-focused narrative, Rotom becomes especially calming. Its gentle motion gives the mind something soft to follow without demanding focus. Its adaptability encourages letting go of rigid thought. It moves, hums, and glows without urgency, inviting relaxation rather than stimulation. Rotom does not anchor itself to one place for long, but it also does not flee constantly. It drifts naturally, responding to interest rather than obligation. This freedom from pressure gives its movement a peaceful quality. There is also a quiet joy in Rotom's behavior. Not excitement, not intensity, but simple enjoyment of existence. It likes being, it likes exploring, it likes interacting. This uncomplicated joy feels light and comforting. As time passes, Rotom continues its gentle exploration. It enters objects, leaves them, drifts through open space, and settles briefly before moving again. There is no final destination, no end goal, just motion without urgency. Rather than concluding with emphasis or closure, Rotom's presence simply continues. It hums softly, glows faintly, and drifts onward, curious and calm, content in movement without pressure, existing comfortably between stillness and activity as the world around it remains quiet and undemanding. Aegislash is a ghost-type Pokémon whose presence feels ceremonial rather than threatening. It does not rush, drift aimlessly, or lash out unpredictably. Instead, it hovers with purpose, perfectly balanced between motion and stillness, as though it understands that control is its greatest strength. Everything about Aegislash suggests intention, from its posture to the way it shifts forms, never acting without reason. At first glance, Aegislash resembles an ancient sword paired with a shield, worn by time yet carefully maintained. Its metal surface does not shine brightly or gleam with excess polish. Instead, it reflects light softly, suggesting age, use, and history rather than decoration. The edges are defined but not exaggerated, reinforcing the idea that Aegislash is a tool shaped by function, not ornamentation. The most defining aspect of Aegislash is its ability to change forms. In its shield form, it becomes defensive and composed, posture closed and stable. In this state, Aegislash feels immovable, like a fortress suspended in the air. There is no aggression here, only readiness. It waits, absorbs, and endures without strain, allowing pressure to exist without reacting to it. When Aegislash shifts into blade form, the change is precise and deliberate. There is no dramatic flourish or sudden violence. The transition is smooth, almost ritualistic, as though guided by an internal rule rather than impulse. In blade form, Aegislash does not become reckless, it becomes focused. Power is applied only when necessary, then withdrawn just as cleanly. This duality does not feel conflicted. Aegislash does not struggle between offense and defense. Both states are part of a single identity, used at different moments with equal comfort. This harmony between opposing roles gives Aegislash a calm presence, one rooted in balance rather than tension. The ghostly aspect of Aegislash is subtle but significant. It is not animated by rage, regret, or unrest. Instead, the spirit within Aegislash feels composed, bound to its form by purpose rather than emotion. There is no sense of haunting or sorrow. The ghost within Aegislash is focused, aware, and disciplined. Legends often describe Aegislash as a judge of character, drawn to those who display leadership or conviction. This portrayal reinforces the idea that Aegislash does not act randomly. It chooses when to engage, when to remain still, and when to move on. Its attention feels selective, not predatory. Aegislash's eye, set within its hilt, watches quietly. It does not flicker or dart. It remains steady, observing without judgment. This gaze feels assessing rather than threatening, as though Aegislash is always aware of its surroundings, but rarely disturbed by them. It sees without reacting, waits without impatience. The ribbon-like arms that extend from Aegislash's hilt move gently, almost lazily, yet always with control. They do not flail or snap. Their motion feels like a subtle current, reinforcing the idea that even when Aegislash moves, it does so with restraint. These movements give Aegislash an almost regal quality, like ceremonial banners drifting in still air. In battle, Aegislash's approach is defined by timing. It does not strike repeatedly or recklessly. It waits for the right moment, shifts form, acts decisively, then returns to defense. This rhythm creates a sense of calm predictability. Aegislash does not overwhelm, it resolves. Despite being a steel type, Aegislash does not feel heavy. It hovers effortlessly, weight distributed perfectly between blade and shield. This lightness reinforces its ghostly nature, suggesting that its mass is guided by spirit rather than gravity. It exists where it chooses to be, unaffected by physical strain. Aegislash's association with ancient battlefields and royal courts gives it an air of history without nostalgia. It does not linger on past conflicts or victories. The past feels integrated, not burdensome. Aegislash carries history the way stone carries markings, present but unspoken. There is a deep sense of discipline in Aegislash's behavior. It does not react emotionally to threats or praise. Its responses are consistent, measured, and calm. This emotional neutrality makes Aegislash feel stable, like something governed by principle rather than feeling. In quiet environments, Aegislash's presence becomes especially noticeable. It hovers silently, metal barely catching the light, ribbons drifting gently. There is no sound of movement, no hum of energy, just stillness, broken only by subtle shifts in posture. This stillness feels grounding rather than tense. Aegislash does not seek companionship, but it does not reject it either. It can remain near others without crowding or interfering. Its presence is unobtrusive, like a silent guardian standing watch without demanding acknowledgement. Symbolically, Aegislash represents balance through discipline. It shows that strength does not need to be constant, and defense does not need to be passive. By understanding when to change and when to remain still, Aegislash maintains control without excess. There is also an element of trust associated with Aegislash. It trusts its form, its timing, and its role. It does not hesitate when shifting states, nor does it doubt its decisions. This trust removes anxiety from its actions, allowing everything to feel smooth and intentional. When Aegislash rests, it often remains in shield form, posture closed and stable. Even in rest, it does not fully disengage. Awareness remains, calm and steady. It does not sleep deeply or drift away. It remains present, ready but not tense. The environments Aegislash inhabits often feel quieter in its presence. Sound softens, movement slows, and attention naturally focuses. This effect is not imposed. It emerges from Aegislash's own stillness, influencing space through example rather than force. There is no fear in Aegislash's ghost typing. Its spirit does not wander or seek release. It is content within its form, aligned with its purpose. This contentment gives Aegislash a peaceful presence that contrasts sharply with more restless spirits. In a sleep-focused narrative, Aegislash becomes especially calming. Its steady rhythm of defense and action mirrors breathing, tension, and release. Observing Aegislash feels like watching a pattern repeat without variation, soothing through consistency. Aegislash does not evolve further, and this feels appropriate. It has reached a state of completion where form and function align perfectly. There is no sense of incompleteness or striving. Everything about it feels resolved. The quiet confidence of Aegislash invites stillness. It does not demand focus or reaction. It simply exists, balanced and composed, allowing the world around it to slow down naturally. Rather than ending with flourish or drama, Aegislash's presence settles into calm vigilance. It hovers quietly, shield steady, blade at rest, awareness intact. Nothing is urgent, nothing is missing. In that perfect balance between readiness and peace, Aegislash remains exactly where it belongs, calm, centered, and complete. Necrozma's presence is defined by quiet hunger and deep stillness, a Pokémon that feels less like a predator and more like an absence searching for completion. Unlike many ghost-type or legendary Pokémon that radiate power outward, Necrozma feels inward-focused, as though its entire existence is shaped around something missing rather than something overflowing. Its presence is heavy, not with aggression, but with emptiness, a silence that lingers rather than echoes. At its core, Necrozma is angular and fractured, its body made of sharp, crystalline black shapes that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. These jagged edges do not feel decorative or dramatic. They feel structural, like broken architecture frozen in place. There is a sense that Necrozma was once whole, once smooth and complete, and that what remains now is a framework holding itself together through sheer persistence. Necrozma does not move often. When it does, its motion is slow and deliberate, each shift of its body accompanied by the sense of immense weight being carefully repositioned. It does not glide effortlessly like some ghost types, nor does it lumber clumsily. Its movement feels intentional, restrained, and heavy with awareness. Nothing about Necrozma's motion suggests haste. Light plays a critical role in Necrozma's identity, not as something it emits, but as something it lacks. Necrozma does not glow or shine. Instead, it dims its surroundings subtly, creating a sense that illumination is being drawn inward. This absence of light does not feel violent or draining. It feels quiet, like dusk settling slowly, rather than night falling suddenly. Necrozma's eyes are sharp and angular, glowing faintly with an internal energy that feels contained rather than expressive. They do not flicker with emotion or intent. They observe steadily, absorbing information without reaction. There is no malice in Necrozma's gaze, but there is also no warmth. It watches because it must, not because it wants to. The ghostly aspect of Necrozma is tied closely to its fragmented state. It does not haunt places or cling to memories. Instead, it exists in a constant state of incompletion, like a shadow cast by something that is no longer fully there. This gives Necrozma a uniquely somber presence, one that feels introspective rather than sorrowful. Necrozma does not seek interaction. It does not approach others with curiosity or aggression. It remains distant, as though proximity itself is something it tolerates rather than desires. When others draw near, Necrozma does not respond immediately. It waits, still and unreadable, allowing time to stretch before any reaction occurs. In battle, Necrozma's actions are measured and heavy. It does not attack repeatedly or wildly. Each movement feels like a commitment, a deliberate expenditure of effort. There is no thrill in its combat style, no sense of excitement. Battle feels like necessity rather than choice, something endured rather than enjoyed. Necrozma's connection to light-based forms emphasizes its relationship with absence even further. When it absorbs light, the transformation does not feel celebratory. It feels corrective, like something being restored temporarily rather than completed permanently. Even in more radiant forms, there remains a sense that Necrozma is borrowing rather than owning that light. This borrowed brightness never erases Necrozma's underlying stillness. Even when more powerful, it does not become energetic or expressive. Its demeanor remains controlled, almost solemn, as though it understands that any restoration is temporary. This awareness gives Necrozma a calm acceptance rather than desperation. The environments Necrozma inhabits often feel quiet and vast. Open plains, empty structures, and wide, echoing spaces suit it best. These are places where sound dissipates and movement feels distant. In such environments, Necrozma does not stand out dramatically. It blends into the silence, becoming part of the stillness rather than disrupting it. There is a sense of endurance tied to Necrozma's existence. It has not faded despite fragmentation. It has not collapsed despite imbalance. It continues, held together by something deeper than physical structure. This persistence feels ancient and unwavering, like something that has survived long enough to stop struggling against its own condition. Necrozma's lack of emotional expression makes it difficult to read. But that unreadability does not feel threatening. It feels neutral. Necrozma is not hiding intent. It simply does not operate on emotional display. Its motivations, if they exist, are internal and quiet. Symbolically, Necrozma represents emptiness without panic. It shows a state of lacking that does not result in chaos or desperation. Instead, Necrozma exists calmly within its incompleteness, continuing forward without urgency. This acceptance gives it a strangely peaceful presence, despite its dark design. Necrozma does not rest in a traditional sense. It enters long periods of stillness where nothing about it changes. During these times, it feels almost statue-like, frozen in posture and form. Yet awareness remains, subtle and constant. It does not sleep deeply or fully disengage. It simply pauses. The fractured nature of Necrozma's body creates shadows within shadows, layers of darkness overlapping each other. These visual details reinforce the idea that Necrozma is not empty in a hollow way, but complex in its absence. There is structure within what is missing. Necrozma does not respond strongly to environmental changes. Light shifting, wind moving, sound echoing nearby do not provoke reaction. It remains centered, as though external changes have little impact on its internal state. This emotional insulation makes Necrozma feel stable rather than detached. In a calm, sleep-focused narrative, Necrozma becomes a symbol of quiet acceptance. It does not demand resolution or closure. It does not rush toward completion. It simply exists as it is, allowing the mind to rest in that same acceptance of incompleteness without anxiety. There is no fear in Necrozma's presence once the initial impression fades. What remains is stillness, weight, and quiet continuity. It does not surprise or startle. It does not lurk or vanish. It stays. Necrozma's ghost typing feels less about death and more about persistence beyond wholeness. It is not a spirit tied to regret or loss. It is a form that continues despite fracture, aware of what is missing, but not consumed by it. Imagining Necrozma standing beneath a dim sky feels grounding rather than unsettling. The world around it is quiet, motion slowed, light muted. Necrozma does not move, and nothing feels wrong because of it. The stillness feels intentional. Necrozma does not invite understanding, nor does it resist it. It simply exists, allowing interpretation without response. This neutrality gives it a calming distance, like observing a distant mountain rather than engaging with a storm. There is no resolution to Necrozma's story, and that lack of resolution feels appropriate. It does not need an ending or a conclusion. Its existence is ongoing, steady and unchanged by expectation. Rather than fading away or escalating, Necrozma remains, fragmented, silent, and composed. It stands within its own shadow without fear or urgency. In that quiet endurance, Necrozma becomes less a symbol of darkness and more a symbol of stillness, content to exist exactly as it is, incomplete yet unwavering, calm within the quiet spaces it inhabits. Fluttermane feels like a presence carried on quiet air, light and distant, as though it exists slightly out of phase with the world around it. Unlike many ghost-type Pokémon that feel heavy with memory or weight, Fluttermane feels soft, drifting, and almost fragile, yet never weak. Its existence is defined by gentle motion rather than force, by persistence rather than impact. Everything about Fluttermane suggests something that lingers not because it is trapped, but because it has nowhere it needs to go. Its body appears small and delicate, with flowing shapes that trail behind it like fabric caught in a slow breeze. These forms never settle completely. They move continuously, but never erratically, creating the impression of motion without travel. Fluttermane does not rush forward or retreat. It simply sways, as though responding to currents no one else can feel. This constant, slow movement gives it a soothing rhythm, one that naturally draws attention without demanding it. The ghostly aspect of Fluttermane is subtle and refined. It does not flicker in and out of visibility or distort the space around it. Instead, it remains consistently present, its form softly defined against the background. There is no suddenness to its appearance. It feels like something that was already there before you noticed it, waiting patiently in the quiet. Fluttermane's eyes are calm and distant, reflecting awareness without focus. They do not lock onto movement aggressively or track with intensity. Instead, they seem to look through the world rather than at it, observing without engagement. This distant gaze reinforces the sense that Fluttermane is not concerned with immediate surroundings or outcomes. It exists comfortably within the moment, unbothered by change. There is a strong sense of emotional neutrality in Fluttermane's presence. It does not express fear, anger, or joy in obvious ways. Any emotion it once carried feels softened by time, diffused into something quieter and less defined. What remains is not emptiness, but calm. Fluttermane does not cling to the past or anticipate the future. It drifts in the present without tension. Fluttermane's movement is almost hypnotic. It glides gently, never touching the ground, never rising too high. Its motion feels guided by invisible currents, like mist shifting in still air. This gliding does not serve a clear purpose. It is not traveling toward a destination. It is simply moving because movement continues, and stopping is unnecessary. The environments Fluttermane inhabits often feel open and quiet. Empty fields at dusk, ruins reclaimed by wind, and wide, silent spaces suit it best. These locations amplify its gentle presence, allowing its soft motion to blend seamlessly into the environment. Fluttermane does not disrupt these spaces, it completes them. Despite its lightness, Fluttermane does not feel fragile. There is an underlying stability to its form, a sense that it will not simply fade away. It persists quietly, unaffected by minor disturbances. Wind, sound, and movement around it do not provoke reaction. It remains steady within its drifting rhythm. In battle, Fluttermane's actions are smooth and controlled. It does not lunge or strike with urgency. Its movements feel measured and precise, applied only when necessary. There is no wasted motion. Each action flows naturally into the next, maintaining the same gentle pace it carries outside of combat. This consistency reinforces the idea that Fluttermane does not change its nature based on circumstance. Fluttermane's ghost typing is expressed through its intangibility and softness rather than fear. It does not haunt or pursue. It does not cling or threaten. Its presence feels like a memory that has lost its sharp edges, something remembered without pain. This quality makes Fluttermane feel calming rather than eerie. There is a sense of timelessness associated with Fluttermane. It does not appear bound to a specific era or moment. It feels as though it could exist in the same way across centuries without change. This timeless quality removes urgency from its existence. Nothing needs to happen, nothing needs to resolve. Fluttermane's flowing form creates gentle visual patterns as it moves. These patterns repeat slowly, almost predictably, reinforcing a sense of calm through repetition. Watching Fluttermane feels like watching waves roll in at a quiet shore, each movement familiar, each moment unhurried. Unlike some ghost-type Pokémon that carry strong symbolism tied to loss or regret, Fluttermane feels detached from narrative weight. There is no clear story of tragedy attached to it. It does not feel like something unfinished or unresolved. Instead, it feels like something that has already accepted whatever came before, leaving only presence behind. Fluttermane does not interact frequently with others. It does not seek companionship, but it does not avoid it either. It can exist near others without acknowledgement, sharing space without engagement. This passive coexistence feels gentle and non-invasive, allowing everything around it to remain undisturbed. Symbolically, Fluttermane represents softness without weakness. It shows that persistence does not require force, and that presence does not require action. By continuing quietly, Fluttermane demonstrates that existing calmly can be enough. There is also a sense of lightness in Fluttermane's presence that feels freeing. It does not carry expectations or demands. It does not impose itself on the environment. It simply drifts, allowing space to remain open and uncluttered. When Fluttermane rests, it does not fully stop moving. Its form continues to sway gently, as though rest and motion are not separate states for it. This constant, low-level movement feels natural and soothing, like breathing that continues without conscious effort. The sound around Fluttermane often feels quieter, not because sound is removed, but because attention softens. Its presence encourages slowing down, listening less for change and more for consistency. Nothing suddenly happens near Fluttermane. Everything unfolds gently. Fluttermane's design reinforces this calming effect. Its colors are soft, its edges smooth, its motion continuous. There are no sharp contrasts or sudden shifts. Everything about it flows, encouraging the mind to do the same. In a sleep-focused narrative, Fluttermane becomes especially effective at guiding relaxation. Its slow, repetitive movement offers something to follow without effort. There is no story to solve, no tension to resolve, just motion continuing calmly. Fluttermane does not represent an ending or a beginning. It exists in between, in the quiet space where nothing needs to change. This in-between state feels restful, allowing the mind to settle without anticipation. There is no urgency in Fluttermane's existence. Time stretches comfortably around it. Moments pass without significance, and that lack of significance feels peaceful rather than empty. As the world around it remains still, Fluttermane continues to drift. Its form moves gently, its awareness remains distant, and nothing interrupts its rhythm. It does not seek conclusion or closure. Fluttermane simply remains, light and steady, drifting through open space without resistance. In that gentle motion, it becomes a symbol of rest without effort, a quiet presence that allows everything else to slow down naturally, content in movement that never needs to arrive anywhere at all. Bennett exists as a quiet embodiment of lingering emotion, not loud or vengeful, but deeply settled into the space where feelings are left behind and slowly soften over time. Its presence does not feel aggressive or threatening. Instead, it feels heavy in a muted way, like an old room filled with memories that no longer hurt but still remain. Bennett does not rush through the world or chase attention. It waits, patient and still, as though it understands that time itself will eventually bring everything to rest. The origin of Bennett is rooted in abandonment, yet the emotion tied to that origin has changed. What may have once been sharp has dulled into something calmer, quieter, and more introspective. Bennett does not cry out or lash out. It carries what remains of those feelings without letting them spill outward. This restraint gives Bennett a solemn dignity, a sense that it has already processed much of what it once held. Bennett's body appears soft and worn, like a plush toy that has been held many times. Its seams are visible, its shape slightly uneven, reinforcing the idea that it was once something meant for comfort rather than fear. These details soften its ghostly nature, making Bennett feel more melancholic than frightening. It does not loom or distort space. It simply stands, present and quiet. The zipper-like mouth on Bennett is one of its most striking features, yet it rarely feels threatening. When closed, it gives Bennett a composed, almost neutral expression. When open, it does not reveal chaos or fury, but depth, as though emotions are stored carefully inside rather than unleashed. This imagery reinforces the idea that Bennett contains its feelings rather than acting on them. Bennett's movements are slow and deliberate. It does not float erratically or flicker between places. When it moves, it does so with intention, drifting gently rather than gliding sharply. Its limbs hang loosely, relaxed rather than tense. This relaxed posture makes Bennett feel calm, as though it has no need to hurry or react quickly. The ghost typing of Bennett feels emotional rather than spectral. It does not haunt places out of spite or cling to past wrongs. Instead, it remains where it feels familiar, where echoes of comfort still exist. Bennett's presence is tied to memory, but memory without pain, softened by time into something quiet and reflective. Bennett's eyes are small and focused, often appearing half-lidded, as though it is always in a state of contemplation. They do not dart around or fixate aggressively. Instead, they observe gently, watching the world without expectation. This calm gaze reinforces Bennett's introspective nature. In environments that are still and dim, Bennett feels especially at home. Empty houses, quiet rooms, and places where sound lingers suit it well. These spaces allow Bennett to exist without disruption, blending into the background rather than standing out. It does not seek isolation, but it thrives in quiet. In battle, Bennett's approach mirrors its personality. It does not overwhelm with force or speed. Its actions feel measured, chosen carefully, rather than driven by impulse. There is no anger in its movements, no desperation. It simply responds when needed, then returns to stillness. Bennett's design carries a strong sense of containment. Everything about it suggests holding rather than releasing, storing rather than expressing. This containment creates a sense of emotional stability, as though Bennett has learned how to live with what it carries rather than be ruled by it. There is a subtle sadness to Bennett, but it is not painful or sharp. It feels distant, like nostalgia rather than grief. This emotional tone makes Bennett calming rather than unsettling, especially in a sleep-focused setting where strong emotion would feel disruptive. Bennett does not seek companionship aggressively, but it does not avoid it either. It can exist near others without interaction, sharing space quietly. This passive coexistence feels gentle, respectful of boundaries and silence. Symbolically, Bennett represents emotions that have settled rather than disappeared. It shows that feelings do not always need resolution to find peace. Sometimes, simply being held gently over time is enough. When Bennett rests, it often becomes nearly motionless, limbs hanging softly, body still. There is no visible tension, no readiness to move suddenly. This stillness feels deep and complete, like a pause that does not anticipate interruption. The world around Bennett often feels quieter in its presence. Sounds soften, motion slows, and attention turns inward. This effect is not forced. It arises naturally from Bennett's calm demeanor. Bennett's ghost typing does not feel cold or empty. It feels warm in a muted way, like a memory that no longer hurts but still matters. This warmth makes Bennett comforting rather than eerie. There is no urgency in Bennett's story. Nothing needs to be reclaimed, avenged, or resolved. Bennett exists as it is, complete in its quiet acceptance. As time passes, Bennett remains where it is, unchanged and unbothered. Its presence does not fade or intensify. It simply continues, steady and calm. In a quiet space, imagining Bennett standing softly nearby feels grounding. It does not intrude or demand attention. It simply exists, offering a sense of stillness and emotional balance. Rather than ending with drama or emphasis, Bennett's presence settles naturally into silence. It remains composed, contained, and calm, holding its quiet emotions gently as the world around it slows and rests. Giratina exists as a vast, quiet force, less like a creature moving through the world and more like a presence the world has learned to accommodate. Its nature feels distant and expansive, as though it operates on a scale far removed from urgency, conflict, or emotion. Where many ghost-type Pokémon feel tied to places or memories, Giratina feels tied to space itself, inhabiting the unseen boundaries where reality thins and structure gives way to stillness. The form of Giratina is imposing, yet not aggressive. Its body stretches long and segmented, adorned with muted gold and shadowed tones that absorb attention rather than demand it. There is weight to its appearance, but not heaviness in motion. Giratina does not lumber or rush. It drifts with deliberate calm, each movement slow and controlled, as though the act of moving itself is optional rather than required. Giratina's wings, shaped like torn shadows edged with faint crimson, do not flap in a traditional sense. They hang and shift gently, responding to invisible currents rather than generating force. These wings do not suggest flight driven by effort. They suggest suspension, a state of remaining aloft without resistance. Watching Giratina move feels like watching a massive object float effortlessly in still air, untouched by gravity's urgency. The ghostly aspect of Giratina is inseparable from its connection to another realm, a space where logic and structure soften. This realm is not chaotic or violent. It is quiet, reflective, and empty in a calming way. Giratina belongs to this space not as a ruler or prisoner, but as a constant, something that exists naturally where others cannot. This belonging gives Giratina a sense of calm authority rather than exile. Giratina does not express emotion in any obvious way. Its face remains composed and unreadable, eyes glowing softly with awareness rather than intent. There is no anger, no sorrow, no hunger reflected there. Giratina simply observes. This emotional neutrality can feel intimidating at first, but over time, it becomes grounding. Giratina is not judging or reacting. It is simply aware. There is a profound sense of patience tied to Giratina's existence. It does not act impulsively or respond immediately to change. Time passes differently around it, stretching and settling rather than rushing forward. Giratina feels as though it has already seen countless cycles begin and end, and has learned that none of them require urgency. In its altered form, Giratina appears even more detached from physical constraint. Its body becomes sleeker, its wings more fluid, its presence more diffuse. This form does not feel like an escalation of power. It feels like a shedding of limitation, a return to something closer to essence than structure. Even then, Giratina remains calm, unchanged in demeanor. The environments associated with Giratina often feel silent and expansive. Vast empty spaces, endless skies, and places without clear direction suit it best. These are not places of danger, but places of openness where nothing presses inward. Giratina fits into these spaces effortlessly, becoming part of their stillness rather than standing apart from it. Despite its legendary status, Giratina does not feel dominant. It does not impose itself on its surroundings or demand recognition. Its presence is subtle in effect but immense in scale. Things slow down around it, not because they are forced to, but because urgency feels unnecessary in its presence. Giratina's movements through space are smooth and uninterrupted. There is no visible effort, no preparation, no recovery. It transitions from stillness to motion and back again seamlessly. This fluidity gives it an almost meditative quality, as though movement is simply another form of rest. In battle, Giratina does not fight with frenzy or excitement. Its actions feel restrained, measured, and purposeful. It does not chase victory, it maintains balance. Attacks feel less like strikes and more like shifts in space, subtle changes that resolve conflict without escalation. Giratina does not linger in confrontation longer than necessary. The ghost typing of Giratina feels deeply tied to isolation, but not loneliness. Giratina does not appear to seek connection, nor does it seem deprived of it. Its solitude feels complete, chosen rather than imposed. This self-sufficiency gives Giratina a calm confidence that does not rely on interaction. Symbolically, Giratina represents the acceptance of what exists beyond structure. It embodies the idea that not everything needs to be ordered, controlled, or resolved. Some things simply exist alongside reality, providing balance by contrast rather than intervention. There is a quiet harmony in Giratina's relationship with the world it inhabits. It does not disrupt balance. It maintains it by remaining separate, allowing other forces to operate without interference. This restraint feels intentional, guided by understanding rather than limitation. Giratina's size contributes to its calming effect. Its vast form makes smaller movements feel insignificant, reducing the perceived importance of minor disturbances. In Giratina's presence, worries feel smaller, urgency feels unnecessary, and time feels expansive. When Giratina becomes still, it does not freeze or lock into place. Its body remains subtly in motion, wings drifting slightly, segments shifting gently. This perpetual, minimal movement reinforces the idea that even stillness is not absolute, but that change can occur quietly without disruption. Giratina does not rest in cycles like most Pokémon. It enters long periods of quiet existence where nothing about it changes significantly. During these times, it feels less like a creature and more like a constant, something that simply remains while everything else moves around it. The realm associated with Giratina often reflects its nature. Space stretches unnaturally, reflections repeat endlessly, and sound fades quickly. These qualities do not create fear. They create calm through repetition and emptiness. Giratina feels perfectly at home in such an environment, unbothered by its lack of structure. There is no sense of regret tied to Giratina's existence. It does not appear burdened by the past or anxious about the future. It exists fully in the present, a present that is vast and unhurried. This temporal stillness makes Giratina especially soothing to imagine. Giratina's presence encourages perspective. In its shadow, immediate concerns feel distant. Motion slows, thought stretches, and attention turns inward. It does not demand reflection. Reflection happens naturally. The contrast between Giratina and more expressive ghost types is striking. Where others carry emotion, memory, or intent, Giratina carries space. It holds emptiness not as loss, but as balance. This makes it uniquely calming rather than unsettling. Giratina does not evolve further, and this feels appropriate. Its form is already aligned with its role. There is no progression needed, no transformation required. It exists as a finished concept, complete and unchanging. In a sleep-focused narrative, Giratina becomes a symbol of deep rest, not the rest of sleep alone, but the rest of letting go of structure, expectation, and urgency. Its presence invites the mind to expand rather than focus, to drift rather than cling. Imagining Giratina drifting slowly through an endless, quiet space feels grounding. Its wings move gently, its body remains steady, and nothing presses in from any direction. There is room to breathe, room to exist, room to simply be. There is no climax in Giratina's story, no moment of resolution or triumph. That absence feels intentional. Giratina's existence does not build toward anything. It simply continues. As time passes, Giratina remains unchanged. Space stretches, light fades and returns, and nothing disrupts its calm trajectory. It does not hurry, and nothing chases it. Giratina's presence settles into quiet continuation. It drifts steadily through vast stillness, aware but unbothered, powerful but restrained. In that endless calm, Giratina becomes less a symbol of darkness and more a symbol of space itself, open, quiet, and perfectly content to remain exactly as it is, while everything else slowly comes to rest. Sableye exists in the quiet spaces where light fades and sound softens, a Pokémon whose presence feels intimate rather than imposing. Unlike towering ghost types or legendary beings tied to vast realms, Sableye feels small, close, and grounded, as though it prefers corners, caverns, and hidden places where nothing demands attention. Its energy is calm and watchful, not predatory, carrying the feeling of something that has learned to live comfortably in the dark rather than fear it. Sableye's body is compact and lightweight, shaped for stillness more than motion. It does not stride confidently or drift dramatically through space. Instead, it crouches, perches, and lingers, often remaining perfectly still for long periods of time. This stillness is not emptiness, it is awareness. Sableye watches patiently, eyes fixed, posture relaxed, as though it has all the time it needs. Those eyes are Sableye's most striking feature. Gem-like and reflective, they catch even the faintest light, shimmering softly rather than glaring brightly. These eyes do not feel threatening. They feel curious and alert, like polished stones resting in shadow. When Sableye looks at its surroundings, it does so quietly, absorbing detail without reacting immediately. There is no urgency in its gaze. The gemstones that form Sableye's eyes are not decorative. They are integral to how it experiences the world. Sableye consumes gems, integrating them into its body, and this act feels less like hunger and more like ritual. It chooses stones carefully, savoring them slowly rather than consuming them greedily. This deliberate behavior reinforces Sableye's patient nature, a Pokémon that does nothing in haste. Sableye's ghost typing expresses itself through subtlety rather than spectacle. It does not vanish suddenly or move through walls dramatically. Its ghostliness feels internal, expressed through how quietly it exists and how easily it blends into darkness. Sableye does not need to disappear to be unseen. It simply remains still long enough for the world to forget it is there. There is a softness to Sableye's movements when it does move. It shifts weight gently, steps lightly, and avoids sudden motion. This careful movement makes it feel considerate, as though it is mindful of disturbing its surroundings. Even in caves, where echoes carry easily, Sableye moves in ways that minimize sound. The environment Sableye inhabits are often enclosed and calm. Caves, abandoned mines, and deep underground chambers suit it perfectly. These spaces are quiet, stable, and removed from surface-level urgency. In such places, Sableye does not feel isolated. It feels at home. Darkness here is not threatening. It is familiar. Despite its association with darkness, Sableye does not feel cold or distant. There is a warmth in its behavior, expressed through curiosity and gentle interaction with its environment. It explores slowly, examining stones, walls, and shadows with interest rather than caution. This comfort with darkness makes Sableye feel grounded rather than eerie. Sableye's mouth, lined with sharp teeth, might suggest danger at first glance, yet these teeth rarely feel aggressive. They are tools, used for consuming gems and interacting with the environment, rather than for intimidation. Sableye does not bare its teeth threateningly or lash out unexpectedly. Its expressions remain neutral, even playful at times. In battle, Sableye's approach mirrors its everyday behavior. It relies on awareness, positioning, and timing rather than brute force. It waits, observes, and acts only when conditions are right. There is no rush to engage, no need to overwhelm. Its actions feel thoughtful and restrained, consistent with its calm demeanor. Sableye's dark typing adds another layer to its identity, one tied to concealment rather than malice. Darkness, for Sableye, is a place of comfort and clarity. It sees well where others struggle, moves confidently where others hesitate. This advantage does not make it aggressive, it makes it relaxed. There is something deeply grounding about imagining Sableye sitting quietly in a dim cave, light glinting softly off its gemstone eyes. The air is still, the ground solid, and nothing changes quickly. Time feels slower in such a space, and Sableye feels perfectly aligned with that pace. Sableye does not seek companionship actively, but it does not avoid it either. It can exist near others without tension, sharing space quietly. It does not demand interaction or withdraw completely. This balanced social presence makes Sableye feel emotionally steady, comfortable with proximity, but content in solitude. Symbolically, Sableye represents comfort in the unseen. It shows that darkness does not need to be feared, and that stillness does not mean emptiness. By remaining calm and observant, Sableye demonstrates that awareness can exist without action. Sableye's design reinforces this symbolism. Its small stature, gem eyes, and crouched posture all suggest a Pokémon that observes more than it acts. Nothing about its appearance demands motion or attention. It exists comfortably without spectacle. When Sableye rests, it often curls slightly inward, posture relaxed, eyes still open but calm. There is no dramatic transition into rest. It simply becomes more still. This gentle resting state feels natural and unforced, like settling into a familiar position rather than falling asleep suddenly. The world around Sableye often feels quieter because of how it moves within it. Sound softens, motion slows, and attention narrows. This effect is not magical or imposed. It emerges naturally from Sableye's own calm presence. There is no sense of tragedy or regret tied to Sableye's ghost typing. It is not bound to loss or sorrow. Its existence feels practical and content, shaped by adaptation rather than emotion. This neutrality makes Sableye soothing to imagine rather than unsettling. Sableye's relationship with time feels relaxed. It does not hurry or anticipate. Moments pass without significance, and that lack of urgency feels peaceful. Sableye exists fully in the present, unbothered by what comes next. In a sleep-focused narrative, Sableye becomes especially effective at encouraging rest. Its stillness invites stillness. Its quiet observation mirrors a mind settling, thoughts slowing, attention drifting without focus. Sableye does not change dramatically over time. It remains consistent, predictable, and steady. This consistency creates a sense of safety, like returning to a familiar place that never demands anything new. There is also a gentle playfulness to Sableye at times, expressed through curiosity rather than mischief. It may tilt its head, examine a gem, or shift position slightly, small movements that feel exploratory rather than disruptive. This light curiosity adds warmth without breaking calm. Sableye's presence does not dominate a space. It fits into it, becoming part of the environment rather than standing apart from it. In darkness, it feels natural rather than out of place. As time passes, Sableye remains where it is, posture unchanged, eyes reflecting faint light. Nothing compels it to move, and nothing feels lacking because of that stillness. It is content to remain. Sableye's presence settles quietly into the background. It continues to watch, calm and unhurried, comfortable in shadow and silence. In that gentle stillness, Sableye becomes a quiet companion of the dark, a reminder that calm can exist even where light fades, and that rest does not require absence, only peace.